These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Beautiful Bag Podcast. I am your host, Leanne Hayden, coming to you from the loft. And this week, I have the beautiful Cass Roberts joining us. We met back at the UOAA convention in August and have been following each other since. We were just talking a minute ago about how we were the last ones that kind of connected at getting coffee before we got our cars, or, before we got the cabs to head to the airport. So Cass, I'm so excited that you're here with us this week.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'll tell you, the UA convention, seeing you there, seeing you light yourself up and watching you dance, woman, my word.
I love to dance. I really believe in the transformative power of dance. And I think that's where that was coming from. That conference was a huge release for me, a huge life changer. I really had not met that many people and definitely had not been in that space for that long with people with ostomies ever. And I've had mine for almost 11 years now. And so it just lit me up. So that's what you were seeing on the dance floor.
Yeah, definitely seeing that on the dance floor because you were lit up. You were your smile was huge. You just were moving and having just a great old time. And it was so wonderful to see it. Like you lit other people up. So thank you for that.
Oh, I love it. You'll be the first one on the dance floor always.
Okay, good. That used to be me back in the day. Now I'm kind of like, I'll wait a little bit, at least get two people on the dance floor.
Yeah, feel it out.
Exactly. So now let's get into your story because it's like you said, like you just mentioned, you've had yours for over a decade. And you just said that UOA was the first time that you were around that many people with an ostomy. So I want to get into all the things. So why don't we start first with your journey? How did you end up in your ostomy?
So I've had Crohn's for 28 years. So it's a storied story. Starting when I was 10 years old. And this was 1993. I want to give away too much. Before a time of internet, before the time of biologics, yeah, all of those things. So I started getting really sick. I couldn't eat. I had arthritis symptoms, and I'm from rural Mississippi. So finding any pediatrician who specialized in gastroenterology was just not a thing. So I did a lot of like traveling pretty far with my parents and went through a lot of misdiagnoses and was told like I had Giardia, like the most random things. But then when I was 11, so it took a whole year, I went to Le Bonheur in Memphis and got a colonoscopy, which I was awake for. And yeah, I woke up during the middle of it. That was scary. But afterwards, they said, what we're seeing is consistent with Crohn's. And at that age, like I had no idea that, that was something that was going to be lifelong. Like, what is that? Like I said, no WebMD. So,
Right. We didn't have that back then.
right. So yeah, that's kind of where everything kicked off. And I started taking prednisone and sulfasalazine, it was called at the time. But I couldn't swallow a pill. So I would always like crush it up into applesauce. And if you know the taste of prednisone, you know that that was absolute torture. But I really spent my adolescence on really high doses of prednisone, moon face, a lot of like body confidence issues, a lot of really just malnutrition, just straight up. Like I was so thin and frail, and like the side effects of prednisone, like my body, my bones were that of like an 80-year-old woman. I was having hot flashes. I was irritable. All this stuff that like a preteen shouldn't have to deal with. But when I was 17, Remicade came out. And that was pretty exciting. I got on it and had about 6 months of remission for the first time. Like I didn't even know what a flare was. I was just like, oh, it's just always like heavy symptoms. So yeah, I took Remicade for 6 months, but then I was told by these Mississippi doctors, I have a bit of a tiff with them.
I can tell, I can hear it in your voice, but that's okay. That's okay because
Yeah.
we've always talked about advocating for yourselves and the things that people go through, especially in the healthcare systems. You know, the doctors sometimes they don't know, they just don't know sometimes. And sometimes they're supposed to know, but they just don't know. And instead of just saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Anyways,
gotten,
we can go down
I
that
have
rabbit hole another time.
I've gotten the shrug before, like waking up from a colonoscopy and just like, we don't know. I was actually told that I had one of the worst cases of Crohn's that they had ever seen in that part of the country. So really what ended up happening was I got sent to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. My first surgery was there between my senior year of high school after I was taken off of Remicade because I was told that they don't know how it affects minors. So they took me off of it and then I went huge flare. Like that's when I had my first surgery. So yeah, I was sent to the Mayo Clinic, and as amazing as the Mayo Clinic is, I mean, it is magical. Um, it was very far away from friends and family, and I was there with one parent, and that sense of community was gone, and the isolation was really ramped up. And I continued to have most of my procedures and surgeries done at the Mayo Clinic. So yeah, a lot of like separation from everything I knew, but also in a much better place. Really like Mississippi is it's a very sick state. And doctors are very overwhelmed with how many patients they have to see. And so it's kind of it's a hard state to be sick in, but it's one where a lot of people are. And that kind of leads me to leaving Mississippi. I'm gonna take a drink of mine.
Yeah. So you go through all this. You're 17 years old at this point. You're now in Minnesota with one parent. You're having all your hospital visits. Is that the time that is that in and around the time you got your ostomy? Did you get your ostomy years later? 2008. Wait a minute. You got it in 2008.
I had one in 2008 and then my permanent one in 2013.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I just had a lot of complications with Crohn's all throughout my 20s. And the first ostomy was because of some fistulas on both sides of my colon, and it like connected down to this softball size abscess sitting on top of my bladder. And at the time, I didn't have health insurance. So I let it go for a long time. Then I went to the Mayo Clinic and got that first ostomy. I had most of my colon taken out, most of my rectum, and basically whenever they put me back together after that ostomy 4 months later, it was just like small intestine to rectum. And it's yeah. And the first time I went to the bathroom after surgery, I was like, this is not
happening.
gonna last.
Yeah, this is not happening.
Yeah. I managed to make it 5 more years, but I sat like this. Like I had a cute little like side sit, but I couldn't sit flat on my bottom for 5 years. It was that painful.
Wow. And so did they ever give you a reason of why they did it that way the first time? Like why they connected it that way the first time?
I think I was so ready to get rid of that ostomy. Like my mentality about it was really negative, and I was like, how long do I have to have this? Like what is the minimum amount of time? And that was really the only intestines I had left at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, we can reconnect you, but like this is what we're working with.
Right. So when you said like, so you had the first one for You said 5 months, 6 months,
4 months.
4 months. What was it like for you in that first initial time?
Really scary. It was something I had thought about a lot growing up and talked to friends about, and just like, I would rather be dead than have something like that. And like, you know, it's just gross. Like worst case scenario, that's, what I would have. And then it came true.
Right.
And my body confidence just hit the floor. Yeah, I didn't know how to dress it. Like, and I'm all about like fashion, and I was a theater major at the time. And theater is all about the body. That's your instrument. And so just really having a huge aversion, like I don't know what to do. Um and I think that's why, like, I really never thought, even though I felt better, I never thought like this is something that I want or like or need to have in
Exactly.
that time.
In that time. And a lot of people think about it. If we all look at it, we look back at all of us, would we prefer to go back to a physical, traditional, and I put that in quotes, body, right? Because I don't like to say normal because we're still normal, but traditional type body without a stoma, but being healthy? Oh, heck yeah. I think every one of us would be like all day long, right? We'll go back that way. But to be able to feel better when we're sick and something's wrong, and to be able to have that feeling of, I want to feel better. And you did feel better. However, they reconnected it. And now you had your little cute little your side seat. And then 5 years later, what happened that they ended up making it permanent?
So basically my rectum had just completely closed. And at the time I was a gigging musician. So I just wanted the show to go on. So I let it go for a while without going to the bathroom at all. And I just kind of stopped eating. Um, and then I went and had a rectal dilation. And during that procedure, there was a perforation, and we didn't know. The doctor didn't know when it happened. I just went home and I thought I was having a reaction to the anesthesia. My fever was like 103. And I finally went to the emergency room, and it was like, oh, this is life or death. You're septic. I had the doctor actually said, you might pass away. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I kind of hate this butthole anyway. So, like, let's get rid of it. At that point, I was so done with feeling ill and having all the procedures and side sitting and all of that. Like, I wanted to be able to perform and not have to worry anymore. So, I had a really great group of friends at that point, much different from the Mayo Clinic days. And they just surrounded me with love and humor. And I went in for surgery, and yeah, came out, proctocolectomy, permanent ostomy, haven't looked back.
And that's been 11 years now. 11
Yeah.
years. And you said that in August was the first time you were around that many ostomates. Now, again, even 11 years ago, we did have the internet-ish.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have, we had MySpace, and Facebook was starting out. We didn't have all of what we have now. How you had a great group of friends and a great group of people around you, which probably changed everything for you this time.
It did.
Yeah. And so what have you done since? It's been 11 years.
Yeah. Well, I got my life back, and have been able to do a lot of things that I never thought that I could. I was a truck driver for 5 years, which like I could have never done before because I would have had to pull over every 5 minutes. Those things are hard to park.
All right, you
So
look like, I got to tell you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about. If you're listening to this on the podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to the podcast, you can go over to YouTube so you can see how cute this girl is and picture her being a truck driver. I love that.
Yeah, and I'm only 5'2", so I had to wear heels to reach the pedals. So it was like a whole nother element walking across the truck stop parking lots. Um, but yeah, it was really fun. I got to see the country, and it just felt like an adventure. I felt so empowered at that point in my life. Oh my gosh. Um, so I was doing that on the weekdays, and then on the weekends, I owned a Princess Tea Party company. So I was dressing up like Cinderella and Elsa and like singing for kids' parties. So it was very like juxtaposed lifestyle I was living. Um, but even, oh my gosh, I remember one of my first parties after having my bag, it leaked on my Cinderella dress. And I felt so terrible because I didn't really even know how to change it at that point. Like it was all still so new, especially in like an environment like that. We're in a different bathroom in someone's house, you're supposed to be on. And yeah, I mean, it was a huge mess and very embarrassing, but luckily I played the guitar for the kids. So I just wore my guitar for the rest of the party. Um,
I mean, and I'm sure you went in and changed the bag and cleaned yourself up, but the stress was just done.
yeah, and the stain was already on the dress. Like I was scrubbing and yeah. I remember taking it to the dry cleaners and they were like, "Oh."
Okay, we will get that out.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Um,
I mean, we've all had episodes of leaks. All of us. Every single
yeah.
person I talk to has had some kind of a leak episode, and we have to go through it. So you just stuck a guitar in front of you, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, that's just a part of life sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I did a really long stint with no leaks at all. And then in the last little bit, I think I've gotten a little bit lax because I just like know it so well. Like I'll forget to like click the pouch on really well or something. Like, okay, Cass.
I did
Um,
that. I did that, and I rolled over in bed. Like I got up, and I could feel. I'm like, what is up? And I'm like, why am I wet? And my eyes are still closed, and I'm like, why am what? And I'm like, no.
I
And it
know.
literally was just not clipping the pouch together too tight.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Kind of
And
like
so
that
much.
Tupperware. You got to hear that click.
All the clicks all the
All
way
the
around.
clicks. Click it, click it. Make sure it's clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing so many things. So you've been dancing. You love to travel. You're now living in Colorado. You're hiking. You really are living your life. Didn't you even say to me you told me that you went to Barcelona?
Yeah, I lived in Barcelona for 4 months. It was my first trip abroad ever, and I went alone to live. So yeah, that was a big thing. I don't think anybody knew I had an ostomy the entire time that I was there. I didn't tell a soul. But it was okay. Like I just did my life in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that important to tell.
So if you
Um,
could go back and look at your younger self, the one that was so afraid of the ostomy, the one that was so worried about what it was going to look like, what would you say to her?
I would say, first of all, I think I would just say like get it. Just get it now because I don't have any Crohn's symptoms and I haven't since I got the bag permanently. So yeah, that was just life changing. And I would say like just be confident, like rock who you are. I think there's so much to celebrate, and I think I have a really cool story despite all of that. So I don't know. Just like be confident.
Yeah,
Be who you are. It's
ex
fine.
exactly. And I think we all need to teach each other that. And I think now that we're all on social media so much more, and we are truly starting to get together more and more, because it's like, hey, there's a conference, are we going? Hey, there's a conference, are we going? I mean, the next one for UAA here in the US is in 2025. And we were just talking about it before we turned this episode on, but before we turned the record button on. But it's in Orlando, Florida. Okay, let's go to Disney World, right? Like, how much fun would that be for everybody just to get together and just have a great time? So now what are
Yeah.
you doing with your life now? Are you still singing? Are you still doing gigs? Are you still in theater? What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm playing music just like more casually. I'm pointing to my brand new ukulele right now.
I see it.
Um,
Oh.
but yeah, I work as a developmental interventionist, which is just working with children 0 to 3, going into their homes, coaching parents on how to provide strategies for children with disabilities and delays. And that has been kind of the me now, like tending to the me then, like we just talked about, like being that person that I didn't really get to have. Like, showing these children like you can thrive. They may not know that what I went through, but in my mind, I'm just thinking like, yeah, we can be there for each other. We can advocate, and I can teach parents how to advocate for their children. Um, in the world that we live in now. So that's been really fun. And I also have a super strong ostomy community here now, and Crohn's and colitis community too. And I've really like played into that a lot more than I ever was before. So we have a great ostomy support group that meets tomorrow. I'm like having dinner with a friend before who has an ostomy. I have an osto bestie who lives in Colorado Springs. Her name is Becca. And we've only met a few times, but it just feels like that particular surgery is so unique and special. I feel like there's just something about people who have them that we really know, like what it is to struggle and what it is to overcome something.
Exactly. Exactly. And whether it's Crohn's, colitis, cancer, an accident, an undiagnosed. Like I've even had people on this on the podcast talking about undiagnosed. Like they've no idea. I have one girl that I interviewed a couple weeks ago, or today earlier today that will show up. Will come. She's coming in next week. Where just lazy colon. Her colon just stopped working. So there's so much more of it going out. And I don't know whether it's because we're now talking about it more and now we have social and now we have WebMD. I mean, I know mine, I've had mine for 8 years. And when I went online to see her, I saw pictures or they sent me home with the stuff. I'm like, this is what it is. And it was all older people. And I'm like, I'm only
Yeah.
mid-40s. Like, what is this? I don't know. Like, seriously? And it took a lot. It took, my girlfriend sent me a photo, an article of somebody else in an ostomy in a bikini at the beach. And she sent me a picture and she said, okay, hey, look. Okay, hey,
Yeah.
look. And I think we're all speaking about it a lot more and we're all being very much more vocal about it. And then we're finding community.
Yes. I have a motto these days, actually ever since the conference: where there is connection, shame doesn't stand a chance. It may not go away completely, but I think it definitely decreases whenever you have people who just like see you
Mhm.
and want to understand you and want to empathize with you or have been through it too.
I love that
So,
motto.
so much.
That's so awesome. You know, Cass, I am so glad that you got to come on the podcast and you were willing to share your story and your journey. And you look so healthy, like so glowing and so healthy and so vibrant that I can't imagine you not being in this world. Like I just can't, because you shine so bright. And like I said, that UOA, like that's I looked at you and I was just like, oh, she's so stinking adorable. Like, look at her.
One of my friends there said that I would have gotten best dressed if
Oh
we were
yeah.
doing relatives. I was like, oh, I'll take that.
Well, that's your theater fashion thing. You did it.
Yeah,
You did
for
it.
sure.
So love it. I love it. All right. If you were, and I always ask everybody this, if you were to leave our listeners with one thing, you've given everybody some great nuggets, but what would that one thing you'd want to make sure that you got across to everybody?
Always love yourself and um, just fully respect who you are. You are so much more than a bag or anything else that's on your body. Your soul is what's important.
That is the best way to end this episode. So, Cass, thank you again so much for being here with us this week.
Thank you, Leanne.